Hey guys, welcome to the next episode of this build. I'm going to jump right in here. I've got some videos and some collaborations coming up soon, and we're going to be starting the next project real soon for the Great Guitar Build Off 2021. So stay tuned for all of that coming up over the coming months. Right now, we're going to start with just sanding down the body. I've carved out all of the little slots where the mortar's going to go. Now we're going to give it a quick clean. We want to make sure everything, all the sawdust, things like that, all of that is removed before we start staining. Now I had to make a decision here on what order I was going to do it and how I wanted to do it. So what you see right here is a sample. So this side has just red stain. And then flip it back. That side actually has black stain sanded down and then red stain. I think that looks way better. It gives it some character. So that's how we're going to do the staining for the guitar body. Basically covered the whole thing with black stain. And you can see all the different grains, all the different woods. You get different shades on it, which I think looks fantastic. But going back to what I was saying earlier, I had to make a decision on how I was going to do this. And my first thought for the mortar, for the bricks, was to put it on using a syringe. So I was going to stain the whole thing and then use a syringe to put it on. I ended up not doing that, and I'm glad I didn't. But it took me a lot of planning to figure out what I wanted to do here. Originally, I had tried putting the mortar in first, and one of the issues with that is when I stained, if I got any overlap, it's then in the mortar. So I didn't really know how to get that out, and it just kind of became a mess in my samples. So now we're sanding down the guitar body to get most of the black stain off, but not all of it. So you're going to see coming up here how I ended up doing the mortar. But basically the mix that I'm using for it is spackle and acrylic paint, so and a little bit of distilled water. So I mixed all of that together to create a compound that looked like mortar, and it's going to solidify like it as well. Now, one thing with staining first and then doing the mortar is you're going to end up with a texture. And I could not sand down the mortar after I put it in, because if I did, I'd sand off the stain that I put on there as well. So the guitar's sanded currently to where it should be for staining, and you can see some of the blocks there. See the black showing through, giving the brick some character. So this is what I ended up doing as far as filling it. Instead of using a syringe, and I decided this probably a day before actually doing this. I had purchased syringes specifically for liquids for crafts, and I was ready to use them, but I didn't actually end up testing them because I decided that this was the best option. So basically I taped off all the lines, and then I made the mortar right here, and then I basically just filled it. And my thought here was I can just take the tape off and I'll have nice straight lines. That's what I used as a scraper. It's an AMC gift card. Kind of worthless nowadays, so I decided it was worth the sacrifice because I didn't have anything else that was good for spreading. I had a decent amount of working time available with the spackle. Uh, I could probably let it sit there for about 15-20 minutes before I had to really do much of anything, so I could make sure it was nice and level. I didn't have to hurry. And there you can see, now with the tape coming off, we've got our first set of lines. Now it would have been too difficult to try to do both directions at the same time on one side of the body. So I just did the horizontal ones. And there you can see how it looks. So after it fully dried, I went ahead and did the vertical ones. But now we're moving to the other side of the guitar. Same process. I had to be careful to not get too close to where the bridge was going to be. And I didn't even carve out lines the whole way. I wanted it as flat as possible where the bridge was going. I love seeing the tape come off and the nice straight lines underneath. Now we're doing the vertical ones. These ones, even though there were less to fill, were a lot more of a pain to tape off because you had to tape off little sections and you had to tape off the edges, whereas when you were doing the horizontal ones, you could go across the entire guitar with one strip of tape. So besides it taking a lot of time, it went pretty well doing the vertical lines as well. Now we flip it over and we do the same thing to the top. You can see I didn't go near where the bridge is at there. It's got its own little level space. Almost forgot, you have to do the sides too. Carved all of those out. For the most part, the sides were pretty easy to do. There weren't a ton of lines. They weren't really staggered, so you just threw down tape and some around the edges. And we got some nice lines right there along the edges. So now the entire guitar is going to be uniform. This was probably the most difficult part. I think I ended up getting some of the mortar on the edge there. I should have just taped the whole corner. I don't know why I didn't to start. But getting it in there in those cracks was kind of difficult just with the angle. But it turned out okay. That AMC gift card lasted the entire time I was doing this. And even after, I actually saved it because I can still continue to use it as a scraper. And there I go, putting on some tape where I should have done it the first time. Sometimes I get lazy with tape and I see how little I can get away with, even though it was literally 1 2-inch piece that I needed to put there. It's always worth it to be extra protected. Make sure you don't get any substances, anything where you don't want them. I missed a little spot there, so I got a tiny bit of spackle and I used my owl to Just kind of fill the edge there real carefully using both hands. Now we are going to clear coat this using triple thick polyurethane. I've used this on a few guitars. I really like this stuff. Now you'll notice I did not sand it down. That's because I couldn't with the mortar. It's the surface ended up being fairly uneven with the mortar being in there. And that was something that I just had to go with. So I was kind of expecting it to be like that in the end, and it's going to be a very textured sort of feeling on the body, but that's okay. I like it with the aesthetic of what I'm doing with the body. Bricks are usually not that smooth. There's usually defects. There's usually some type of texture on them, and I wanted that to remain in this project as well. So there's little bits and pieces where the mortar's a little bit higher, the mortar's a little bit lower, but I think it adds character and really fits in with the theme of the project. And we're just doing some quick coats to start, not laying it on too thick, trying to keep it relatively even. This stuff seems to level pretty well too, which is another reason I like using it. So if I'm using polyurethane 4 bodies in a spray can, this is probably what I'm going to keep using. I have tried a lot of different ones, and I've consistently gone back to this brand and this type. We're using a satin for this. I thought about using a matte finish, but I did not want it to be that glossy. I think the satin was perfect. It has a little bit of gloss, but not too much. Now we're drilling out the tuning peg holes with a drill press. I did not have a drill bit that was big enough. Well, I did, but it was too big. My good drill bits are in millimeters, and I had a 9 and a 10, and I think the measurement was 9.5. So I used the 9 there to make sure I got them straight, and then I filed out the rest until I got the tuning pegs to fit. It took longer this way. I wish I had a drill bit that was exactly what it needed to be, but what can you do? Now we're just marking where the screws are going to go. I actually ended up staining the headstock twice. So I did it this time, and then I ended up scratching the headstock when I was trying to adjust the truss rod. So I decided to just sand it all off and restain it. And there we are, cleaning it up a little. I really like the lines and the curves in the headstock. Quick heat gun. It's cold out, so I'm warming up my hands too while I dry it off and get it ready for the red stain. And there we go with the red, and you can see the lines kind of stand out, and that's because of the black stain that we put on there to start. I really like layering stains. I think it gives a very nice effect on a lot of woods. Here I decided to try something new, and that was I attempted to radius a fretboard using a belt sander. It didn't really work. It worked well enough to where I got a lot of material out quickly. And there I am checking the radius. Wasn't close. but it needed to be thinned out anyways, so no big deal. That saved me a lot of hand sanding, and now I can really work on the radius. I started with the leveling beam, and then I switched over to the radius block for a little while. Then I went back to the leveling beam. You can use a variety of devices to level a fretboard. I wanted to get a bunch of material off quickly with the radius block. And there I am filling some of the holes. This type of wood had a lot of like little holes just naturally on it, and I chipped some of the edge off there. Now I'm spraying the cavities with conductive paint. I bought a large bottle of conductive paint, which you saw there. I was not expecting it to be in a spray can. It did not say that when I ordered it. I was worried about using it, but it actually went super fast, and if you mask off everything properly, you get a nice one coat, and that's all you need to do. Now we're using guitar finishing oil. This stuff comes from Crimson Guitars. I have never used this before. Decided it was time to use it for the neck. And I'm very happy with the way it came out. I put probably about 6 coats on. The way that you're supposed to apply it is put a lot on there, let it get tacky, and wipe it all off after about 10 minutes or so. There you can see the conductive paint. It goes on way more consistent in the spray can than it does with a brush. So I'm actually glad that they sent me that. I'm now going to use it from here on out. Now that the neck has had time to dry, we're putting more finishing oil on it. The more finishing oil you put on, the more glossy it seems to get. And if you sanded and you're wiping it off as you should be, you don't need to sand in between coats, which is kind of cool. Now we're making a wiring harness. This is how all of the cavities are grounded together. It goes to our bridge and eventually connects to the control pot. I don't like wiring. If you've watched my videos before, I've talked about how I don't like wiring. I've gotten better at it. These little clips have helped a lot so that it holds exactly what I need so that I can heat things up. And I'm tinning all of the wires to start so that when I do connect them, they're going to go together nicely. And after you put the little ends on, got some heat shrink tubing, put that over. And I soldered these on to the tips. In the past I just kind of clamped them on, but this time I wanted to solder so that I have a nice strong connection. Alright, we're about to wrap this one up. Thanks for watching. We're nearing the end of this build. We're going to be focusing on the Great Guitar Build-Off next. I've got a few other little projects in between, so stay tuned for those. I'm excited for the Great Guitar Build-Off. I kind of wish I saved this guitar for it initially, but I've got some ideas, and I think one of them is going to be really good. So stay tuned for that. We'll be starting that next month, and you'll see some other videos in between, and hopefully we'll get this guitar done soon.